Welcome everybody to Selling to the CIO podcast. It's been a couple weeks. Glad you're joining us. I have a guest with me, somebody new to my relationship circle. Actually, usually the folks that I've talked to in the past, I've known for many years, and Joe's a relatively new relationship, and I really enjoy working with him and talking to him, and learning from him. So Joe, appreciate you taking the time this morning or afternoon. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the invite, David. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of background. I know you're coming from the financial world, but you've had a pretty long career, dealt with a lot of sales folks like myself. But just a little intro would be awesome.
Sure. As you said, my name is Joe Gardner. I'm the Group Vice President and Director of Technology Operations at Bryn Mawr Trust. So in my role here, I'm responsible for all of the day-to-day operations of the technology at the bank, including some change management and engineering responsibility. Also under my umbrella is the project management office. So we do a lot of the running of the business, so to speak.
Awesome.
Um, as you said, I have a pretty diverse background. I won't go too deep into it, but I've worked in financial services, healthcare, also the government space, generally all over technology, data, application development, project management.
Yeah, awesome. And I know we talked about this before. You look much younger than you are, and you have a lot more experience than most people would think by just looking at you, since you got rid of that beard. So since people see
Yeah,
if people see you on LinkedIn, they won't recognize you. So.
that's true. Yeah, I plan on updating that picture soon. So maybe by the time people see this, they can put two and two together.
There you go. Awesome. I appreciate it. So I think you know the gist here of the podcast. We're trying to educate sales folks out there, whether they're in IT or not, what works and what doesn't work, trying to get meetings with folks like yourself. It's been a little bit iffy here over the pandemic. You can't, you can't, see anybody personally anymore. So you got to find a different way that connects. Hopefully we're coming out of that. But if you wouldn't mind, just giving us some of your good and the bad of what sales folks are doing these days. What works to get your attention? What do you appreciate? And more importantly, what can't you stand about folks like us sometimes? I guess we'll start there and see how it goes.
Sure.
Sometimes people can talk 5 hours about that. So we'll see.
Yeah, getting me to shut up is usually the problem.
All right, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good.
So I did read your David. I bought it and read it this past week, and
Thank you.
I think you hit a lot of the high points of what I would agree with. Let me focus in on cold calls and cold emails. I understand. I actually spent a little spin through sales myself when I was a younger man, and I get the purpose of cold calls, but honestly, the chances of you getting me on the phone in a cold call is slim to none. And if you do get me by mistake, you happen to have a number that is close to one I recognize or something like that. Uh, the second I understand what your purpose is, I'm going to politely as possible say, I don't take cold calls and I'm going to hang up. Because I don't have time for that. Um, a better way to get a hold of somebody like me is twofold. One is um, be ready when I call, right? So the general gist of how I'm going to operate is I'm going to lay out a strategy. I'm going to try and figure out the best way to go, whatever I'm doing, and then I'm going to look for strategic partners to help me execute that strategy. And I'm going to look and I'm going to call people. I'm going to cold call people, right? I'm going to call people and I'm going to say, hey, I know a little bit about your company, your technology, you, whatever. Let's talk a little bit. And when that call comes in, the better job you do of being able to quickly understand what I'm looking for, make my problem your problem, and figure out how to help me solve it, the more likely it is it's going to stick and we're going to have a relationship that goes forward and probably outgrows what I'm looking for today. Um, so
I
the
like
other thing is,
I love that.
yeah,
If I, I think you just came up with the name of the podcast for this episode. Make my problem your problem.
right.
You're the first person I've spoken to a lot of folks, but that perspective you just gave of that you're going to do some homework and you're going to make the cold calls and be ready when I do make the call. Because in a lot of cases, right, I preach you get one chance to make a first impression, right? Like almost like a Head and Shoulders commercial. Steal the slogan from those guys. To be ready, right? Because hey, this is it, right? You better shine. So that's interesting. I love that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And it's a little bit tricky compared to some of the strategies in your book, right? Because I think part of what you're espousing is, do your homework, know about the company, know about me, and be able to approach me in the way that I would likely want to be approached. And I think that's all good, by the way. I think that's going to be most successful. But if I call you, you don't have the time to do that work.
That's right.
And so I'm going to suggest something that's kind of probably pretty difficult if you haven't spent a lot of time in technology, but there are, okay, so I'm an old software architect, right? And in software and in architecture in general, we have these things called patterns, right? There's always patterns that you can identify, and there's known solutions for those patterns. I won't go into too much detail and bore your audience, but there's also anti-patterns. There's things that you can recognize that won't work. And in IT, I think there's a lot of anti-patterns in organizations that with a few questions, you can start to understand what are some of the problems this company or this person is likely going to have. A simple example would be I've been in a number of organizations that don't do portfolio management well. Well, if you don't do portfolio management well, your team's going to be overstressed. You don't have good prioritization. There's going to be a lot of pet projects. Most of your projects are going to be overdue because you have too much work to be able to do. So there's symptoms of that anti-pattern that if a salesperson starts to hear those things, they can start to say, hey, you may have a problem with portfolio management or with project management in general. And so maybe that's an opportunity to be able to close on that pain.
That's I like it. I like you get into the development of the patterns. I like that. So, and it's very true, right? Listen, PMO is always one of those hot, sticky subjects, right? The projects are in the red. They're over budget. It's always a hot topic for technology leadership these days to try to get projects done. So that's probably one of those things always that can strike a conversation, right? As far as starting a conversation at least. What else do you see these days that some of these things that sales folks do that probably are like, is this guy person crazy? I'm never going to call this person back. What are they thinking? And we'll get into some of that. And then, some other things that do work, right? Because we always want to end on a high note
Sure.
and educate folks.
Yeah. So I've been at Bryn Mawr Trust for just over 2 years now.
Okay.
I've actually had a decent amount of turnover in our partner ecosystem,
Mm.
which I think is normal. But at the same time, I didn't bring anybody with me. I didn't come here thinking to myself, "Oh, I'm going to bring these guys with me." I came here open-minded,
Mm.
and a lot of the vendors that we had here, sort of, they gave me the vibe like I was there at their behest. I should be listening to them and buying what they're selling me. And, if I didn't get back to them, I was somehow unprofessional. Or, again, they were making their problem, sales pipeline, quotas, so forth. They were making their problem my problem. And that's just not how it works. And misunderstanding that is going to be a real easy way to rub me the wrong way. I don't mind, and in fact, I prefer a partner to make money. In order for them to be excited about helping me, they need to be making money. I get it. I see how the world works, but the flip side is also true. I need to be getting value, and I need to be getting, again, my problem solved. And so I think approaching it from that standpoint instead of sort of the salesperson saying, "What can you buy from me?" Is a better approach. I had one particular vendor, remain nameless, was red on a project that was started before I got there, and you know when I first started talking to them, all they wanted to talk about is other things that they could sell me. And, very, very quickly they ended up in the dead to me column because if you can't deliver the things that I'm getting beat up on, why would I even think about buying the next thing from you? Just again, put yourself in my shoes just for a moment. Think about that. Um, I'm under a lot of pressure, just like you guys are from a sales pipeline. I'm under pressure for operations and the lights on, things working. When things aren't working, I've got, sometimes the CEO breathing down my neck thinking, why isn't this piece of technology working? that's my primary problem at this point. That's how you got to help me solve that before we talk about anything else.
Yeah, it's so true. I like that. Again, another good sound bite there. Don't get into the dead to me column. It's so true. It's just like you tell Rep, listen, it's a marathon, right? You're not going to go in. You're not, and if you're working for an organization like that, you're probably in the wrong organization, right? You don't want to go in there, especially to a new relationship, and just start trying to sell everything in your bag, right? Figure out, like you said, right, what your problem is, own that, right? Try to make Joe look good, understand what he's dealing with on a daily basis, right? And what he has to report, report up. And, you know, building that trust and gaining that relationship that way is just, to me, the way to do it, right?
Mhm.
Just one baby step at a time, and don't come in there guns a-blazing. If you do things right in little baby steps, build the trust, build the credibility, good to me, good things will come. And I've seen you practice that, right? And going back to what you said previously about, listen, it's nice to hear a customer say, "Hey, I know you got to make money, right? You got to succeed. You got to you got to have a profit here, right? But if you're succeeding, we're going to succeed, and it's got to be a win all the way around for everybody, right?" So, thank you for saying that. That's appreciated from somebody certainly in sales leadership, to that the customer appreciates what we have to do as well. But it's got to work both ways. That to me is the
Absolutely.
best partnership that can be. And the customers that I've had for a long time, in that the most fruitful relationships that are long lasting, that's an understanding that's there, versus, because there are a lot of customers that have not passed, it's all about pricing. You give me the best price or you get out of here. That's not the kind of partnership I want to have, right? If you're going to do that, then there's no chance that we can build a relationship, because I got to take some of that money that we're at least making and invest it back into what we're trying to do for you guys, right? So thank you for those words. That's refreshing, so I appreciate that.
And what you said there, I think is important. You're looking for a partner as well, right? I'm looking for a partner. You're looking for a partner. And I think it's important for both sides to enter into this thing knowing we have lots of choices, right? There's lots of CIOs you can sell to. There's lots of salesmen I can talk to. So you want to find the right partner that fits you. I don't. I'm not a transactional person. I'm generally not looking for the best bottom line price on whatever might be able to fit my problem. But there are people that are out there doing that. And
Oh
if
yeah.
you want to be that kind of salesman, transactional salesperson, find those people. You'll have more success than finding me. We're just going to annoy each other. That's the
There's a lid for every pot when it comes to sales, right? So you can certainly go find that transactional company. But
right.
I'm in, I've always in my career been more, I want to gain a fruitful, long-lasting relationship, and those are the kind of relationships that you described. And listen, it's in myself included, and I tell the reps all the time, listen, sometimes you got to fire a customer. Sometimes they're
Mhm.
just not worth it. Sometimes they're going to just beat you to death, and if you're paid a certain way, you're not going to make any money you're not going to make any money on this situation. So move on and focus your energy elsewhere. It's hard to do because, listen, I always preach, it takes 5 years, 2 years, 1 year to win a customer, and 5 seconds to lose them, right? That's
Yeah.
just the way it goes. One little hiccup, especially if they're not valuing the relationship of it, they'll turn you off, and when it's time to renew that contract, forget about it. They're gonna go to the next person. So yeah, it's definitely a two-way mutual street, and it's so refreshing to hear somebody like yourself in a decision-making role, you know, understand the value of having a true partnership, just versus a transactional situation.
So interesting story. If we have time,
Yeah.
I've actually been fired recently by one of my partners.
Ah.
Uh, and the funny thing about it is I saw exactly why he did what he did. And, I won't go into too many details, but he wanted a more strategic partnership. And for a number of different reasons, I couldn't give him that partnership. A lot of it was outside of my control. And so, he called me up and he said, I'm not going to be your rep anymore. And we talked a little bit about it. And to be honest, if I go somewhere else, I might give him a call. He's not in the dead to me column, right? Because we understand each other and we understand what we were looking for. And it just didn't work at that time. And so it doesn't mean that it won't work in the future. And so, it's kind of interesting. It's not necessarily a relationship ending situation. It just sometimes, again, being honest, straightforward, making sure that you're both getting wins out of this. Sometimes you can't go win-win. Let's part ways and come back another time.
It's it's like being friends with your exes, right? Sometimes it
Right.
works out, sometimes it doesn't. And it's nice that you said that, because it sounds like he called you and it was an honest conversation. It was good dialogue. You probably appreciated him doing that, and vice versa. And like you said, he didn't make the dead to me column, which is very refreshing, right? Because I think it sounded like you respected and appreciate what he did, at least, right? That it's
Yeah.
just not going to. Sometimes relationships just don't work out. There's
Right.
it's 50-50 in marriage. It's probably similar in IT, I would imagine, right? And I get that. And a lot of times, right, I tell the reps, listen, we may not have what that company needs, right? Don't fit a
Right.
square peg in a round hole. Just wait till the time is right. Sell them something that they need and that we can add value. Because if you try to force feed something down their throat, it's going to fail, and then you're going to be in the dead to me column, and then that relationship is dead. And sales is a if you want to be in this thing for a long time, it's a long term play. And especially in the Philadelphia market and in a lot of other markets, it's a small world.
Yeah.
So Joe might end up somewhere else where you're the rep and you piss him off. Guess what? He's not going to do business with you, right? So
Right.
always try to go out on a high note, a respectful note. Candid dialogue is what I've seen always works best.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
that's just the way I try to roll. So
And you never know where we're going to be in 5, 10 years, right? The likelihood is we're not going to be with the same organization. Some of us are lucky enough to work for those great organizations where you stay there for a long time. But that's not the likelihood, right? And so the situation changes.
yeah, and all the time, right? So you and I are a similar age, right? You started out in your career. I was a junior rep. You were a programmer probably, and you've worked
Yep.
your way up to this position to now where you're making IT budget buying decisions, right?
Right.
And so keep those relationships, because Joe at some point will be in a different level, right? Where if you've done things right along the way, he's going to call you. And that's what we try to preach all the time. I try to educate reps. Just be careful. Don't try to chase the dollar right away. Sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't. But go to an organization that's going to let you invest the time and build long-lasting, meaningful relationships that you're able to do the right thing for the customer. So that's
Right.
I think you've kind of reiterated that here today. So.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
hey, we're at the 18-minute mark. See, I told you this goes fast. Do you have any, before we shut it down, any wisdom you'd like to throw out there? Any last words?
Sure. So two quick ones, and
Yeah.
just obviously take them with a grain of salt. I don't know your business that well. One place where I'm definitely looking to talk to people is at trade shows or conferences. If I go to a conference, I'm there to get information about different vendors, different products, different solutions, and so it's a great place to meet me and talk to me.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
I would say I get turned off every time there's some sort of scam where you scan my badge and get my personal information
Yeah.
and so forth. Just talk to me. Just talk to me. I don't need your squishies or whatever you're handing out. Some people do, but I'm there to talk about the information. So just talk to me, and that would be
Yeah.
good. The last thing is,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
No, no, I was gonna say most people go to those big conventions and they bring the bag and they to the swag so they can give it back to their kids as a gift. I think that's the
Yeah,
majority of that.
I'm not saying I'm not going to take it. I'm just saying I'm not there to get it. That's
I
all.
get you're if you're investing your time and money, you're there to learn, get
Right.
educated. That makes sense. And there, I interrupted you. There was one more thing.
No, and then you mentioned this in your book, the sort of the timing of things, right? You know, as much as I rail against it, we're in a fiscal calendar world, right, where we sort of budget for the fiscal calendar, and then that's what we're going to do. I happen to think that decision horizon is a little bit too long. I think we need to be a little bit more agile. But that being said, I don't always have money for your solution, even if I want it. And so, understand that Q3, early Q4, you're going to have more success. At least talk to me. So that's the kind of time to hit me at a trade, at a trade event. That's when I'm planning out my budget for the
Yeah.
next.
Well, Joe, this was awesome. That was a quick 20 minutes. Boy, I've done a lot of these, and
I told you I could talk.
I could talk to you for a long time. It was awesome. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your contribution. I'm sure folks are going to get a lot out of this. So thanks again, and have a great weekend.
Great. Thanks, David. You too.
All right, you got it.